What if everything we knew about storing knowledge was just the tip of the iceberg? Picture this centuries before libraries and databases. Ancient scholars faced a monumental challenge: how to preserve their wisdom without paper, without ink, without any of the tools we take for granted today. And yet, they didn't just survive, they thrived, devising methods so clever, so unexpected, that many of them have slipped through the cracks of history. These weren't just random tricks, they were the lifeblood of civilizations, the hidden threads that kept entire cultures from unraveling. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 22 of these forgotten techniques, each one a testament to human ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. Think about the last time you jotted down a note on your phone or saved a file to the cloud. For ancient scholars, the stakes were infinitely higher. Losing knowledge wasn't just inconvenient, it could mean the collapse of medicine, law, even entire systems of belief. So they got creative. They carved secrets into stone, wove them into textiles, even encoded them into the very architecture of their cities. Some methods were so subtle, so brilliantly disguised, that modern researchers are still piecing them together. This isn't just history, it's a detective story, one where every clue reveals another layer of brilliance. What makes these methods truly awe-inspiring isn't just their cleverness, it's what they tell us about the human spirit. When faced with the threat of forgetting, these scholars didn't give up. They invented, adapted, and sometimes even risked their lives to ensure their knowledge would outlast them. As we explore these 22 forgotten techniques, you'll discover more than just ancient trivia. You'll uncover a blueprint for resilience, a masterclass in problem-solving that transcends time. So let's step into the shadows of history together, where the echoes of these lost arts are waiting to be heard once more. The Inca civilization mastered one of history's most ingenious memory systems without ever putting pen to paper. Their solution, the quipu, a dazzling array of knotted cords that transformed simple strings into a sophisticated data storage device. But this wasn't just a primitive accounting tool. Each knot was a deliberate choice: its color, its position along the cord, even the direction of the twist held layers of meaning. Imagine a library where books are replaced by threads, where numbers, laws, and epic stories are told not with ink, but with textures and tensions. What's truly astonishing is the scale of information these knots could hold. A single quipu might track harvests across an empire, recording thousands of data points with flawless precision. Others may have preserved myths or royal decrees, turning fibers into something far more durable than parchment. And here's the twist: modern researchers are still racing to crack their full code. Some knots clearly represent numbers, but others, they might be syllables, place names, even hidden poetry. The quipu's genius lies in its adaptability, proving that writing isn't limited to symbols on a page. Consider the sheer practicality of this system. While paper crumbles and ink fades, these knots endured lightweight, portable, and immune to the ravages of time. In an empire stretched across treacherous mountains, quipus could be rolled up and carried by runners across vast distances, delivering complex messages without a single spoken word. And unlike clay tablets or stone carvings, they could be updated endlessly, with new knots added as knowledge grew. This wasn't just record keeping, it was a living, evolving language of touch and pattern. Yet the quipu's legacy is bittersweet. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, they dismissed these knotted cords as primitive curiosities, destroying countless quipus as pagan relics. Today, only about 600 survive, their secrets still whispering just out of reach. But every decoded knot reveals another fragment of a civilization that refused to let its knowledge disappear. The quipu stands as a silent rebellion against forgetting, a reminder that innovation thrives in the most unexpected forms. While the quipu turned fibers into data, ancient scholars in Greece and Rome had their own ingenious solution, one that fit right in the palm of their hand. Enter the wax tablet, the ancient world's ultimate reusable notebook. Picture a small wooden frame filled with smooth, dark wax, paired with a pointed stylus for writing and a flat end for erasing. This wasn't just a tool, it was a revolution in portable knowledge, as versatile as a modern smartphone, but powered by nothing more than beeswax and ingenuity. What made these tablets so extraordinary was their sheer practicality. A student could jot down lecture notes in class, then wipe the surface clean with a quick scrape of the stylus. A merchant might draft a contract, adjust the terms, and finalize it, all on the same surface. Even Roman lawmakers relied on them for drafting decrees, proving that the humblest materials could shape the course of empires. Some tablets were so thoughtfully designed they featured hinges, allowing multiple wax panels to fold together like an ancient laptop, but the real magic lay in their democratizing power. Unlike parchment or papyrus, which were expensive and labor-intensive to produce, wax tablets were affordable and accessible. Suddenly, knowledge wasn't locked away in temples or exclusive schools. It could travel in the hands of anyone with something to say or learn. Archaeologists have even found tablets with layers of erased text still faintly visible, like ghostly echoes of conversations from 2,000 years ago. Yet for all their simplicity, wax tablets had staying power. They outlasted empires, remaining in use well into the Middle Ages. Even today, their legacy lingers in the very language we use. The phrase tabula rasa, or blank slate, comes straight from the smoothed wax of these ancient notebooks. It's a reminder that sometimes the most enduring innovations aren't flashy or complex. They're the ones that meet us where we are, turning everyday materials into vessels for ideas that last millennia. Long before paper or printing, the Shang dynasty priests of ancient China turned divination into an art of preservation, using nothing more than animal bones and fire. These oracle bones reveal a brilliant fusion of spirituality and record-keeping, where every crack and inscription served a dual purpose. Picture a priest carefully carving a question into a polished ox shoulder blade or turtle shell. Will the harvest be plentiful? Is now the time for battle? Then, with precise heat applied, the bone would fracture, its jagged lines interpreted as messages from the gods. But here's what makes these artifacts extraordinary. They weren't just temporary tools for prophecy. They became timeless capsules of knowledge, etched with some of the earliest forms of Chinese writing. The scale of this accidental archive is staggering. Over 200,000 fragments have been unearthed, each one a snapshot of life over 3,000 years ago. Some record royal decisions, like the movement of armies or the construction of cities. Others capture intimate details, complaints of toothaches, worries about childbirth, even the outcomes of hunting trips. What began as ritual objects evolved into a sprawling database of Shang society, proving that the drive to document our existence is as old as civilization itself. What's truly remarkable is how these bones transformed ephemeral moments into permanent history. Unlike oral traditions which shift with each retelling, the inscriptions remained frozen in time, their characters carved deep enough to survive millennia underground. Modern scholars have deciphered over 4,000 distinct symbols from these bones, tracing the evolution of Chinese script from pictorial glyphs to the complex characters still used today. In a way, the priest's quest for answers from the divine gave us something equally precious, a direct line to the thoughts and fears of people who lived centuries before Confucius or the Great Wall. Yet the oracle bones also hint at a deeper truth about how knowledge survives. The very act of seeking divine guidance required meticulous record-keeping, turning superstition into science. Priests noted the date, the question, and even whether their predictions came true, creating an early form of empirical tracking. And because these bones were often stored in royal archives, they avoided the fate of perishable bamboo or silk scrolls. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most enduring records aren't created intentionally. They're the byproducts of rituals, accidents, or everyday acts that outlast their original purpose. Today, these fragments are more than archaeological curiosities. They're a bridge to a world where the spiritual and the practical were inseparable. The cracks that once foretold droughts now reveal how a civilization organized itself, how it worshipped, how it measured time. And in their delicate engravings, we find proof that even in antiquity, humans understood the fragility of memory and went to extraordinary lengths to defy it. Imagine holding an entire library in your mind, not as scattered fragments, but as perfectly organized as shelves in a grand hall. This was the genius of the Greek memory palace, a mental storage system so powerful that orators could recite hours of speeches without missing a single word. At its heart was the method of loci, a technique where information became vivid objects placed along a familiar path like furniture in an imaginary house. Cicero himself used it to deliver flawless legal arguments, turning his mind into a fortress of knowledge no enemy could burn or steal. The process was deceptively simple yet astonishingly effective. A speaker would first visualize a space they knew intimately, a childhood home, a temple, even a winding garden path. Then, they'd assign each piece of information to a specific location. A historical date might live as a carved statue on the staircase, a legal precedent as a glowing orb on the dining table. To recall the material, they'd simply take a mental walk, seeing each detail in its place. The more bizarre or emotionally charged the mental image, the stickier the memory became. This wasn't just rote repetition, it was storytelling with the brain as both author and audience. What's remarkable is how this ancient method mirrors modern neuroscience. Today, we know our brains are wired to remember spaces and images far better than abstract words. The hippocampus, the region responsible for navigation, also plays a key role in memory formation. The Greeks, without any understanding of brain anatomy, had hacked this biological reality centuries ago. Their memory palaces transformed dry facts into multisensory experiences, engaging emotions, spatial awareness, and even humor to make knowledge unforgettable. But the real testament to this technique's power, its endurance, medieval scholars used memory palaces to preserve classical texts during the chaos of the Dark Ages. Modern memory champions still rely on it to memorize decks of cards or thousands of digits of pi. Even Sherlock Holmes' Mind Palace in popular fiction owes its existence to this ancient Greek innovation. Unlike fragile scrolls or stone tablets, these mental libraries couldn't be destroyed by war, fire, or time. They traveled wherever their creators went, instantly accessible with a moment's concentration. Yet the memory palace's greatest lesson isn't about memorization, it's about imagination. The Greeks understood that knowledge isn't truly stored until it's woven into the fabric of our minds. Their palaces weren't just storage rooms, they were workshops where facts became stories, numbers became faces, and ideas became artifacts you could almost touch. In an age drowning in digital data, this ancient art reminds us that the most resilient storage system ever invented might just be the one between our ears. Baked into the very earth beneath their feet, the Mesopotamians crafted knowledge that would outlast empires. Their clay tablets, pressed with wedge-shaped cuneiform script, weren't just records, they were time capsules hardened in kilns, designed to withstand the chaos of millennia. In the Great Library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, over 30,000 of these tablets formed what might be history's first systematic attempt to gather all human understanding in one place. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a search engine, where every query led not to pixels on a screen, but to tangible pieces of earth inscribed with the weight of civilization itself. What's staggering is the sheer breadth of subjects these unassuming slabs preserved. One tablet might detail the movements of Venus across the night sky, while another laid out the exact price of barley in a Babylonian marketplace. There were medical texts diagnosing ailments with surprising accuracy, legal codes that shaped early justice systems, and even humorous proverbs proving that ancient people loved a good punchline as much as we do. And then there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest surviving great work of literature, its hero's adventures etched into 12 clay tablets that somehow survived wars, natural disasters, and the rise and fall of dynasties. Unlike papyrus scrolls that crumbled or wax tablets that could be wiped clean, these fired clay archives turned storytelling into something nearly indestructible. The process itself was a marvel of intentional preservation. Scribes would press reed styluses into wet clay to form precise cuneiform symbols, then bake the tablets until they were as hard as brick. This wasn't just writing, it was alchemy, transforming soft mud into something that could survive floods, fires, and even the occasional sacking of cities. Some tablets were even encased in clay envelopes, creating literal layers of protection for sensitive contracts or royal decrees. Imagine sealing a document not with a flimsy sticker, but with an airtight shell of ceramic that would need to be broken to reveal its contents. But perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of these libraries was their organization. Tablets were catalogued by subject, stored in labeled rooms, and even included what we'd now call citation references to older sources. The library at Nineveh had acquisition records tracking how texts were obtained, whether copied from originals or collected from distant cities. This wasn't haphazard hoarding. It was early information science, a recognition that knowledge only becomes powerful when it's systematically preserved and accessible. Today, these tablets challenge our assumptions about fragility and permanence. While we back up data to cloud servers that could vanish with a corporate bankruptcy, Mesopotamian records inscribed 4,000 years ago still sit in museum cases, perfectly legible. They remind us that sometimes the simplest solutions, earth, water, and fire, can outlast the most advanced technology. And in their neat rows of wedge-shaped markings, we see the birth of an idea. That knowledge isn't truly alive unless it's built to endure. High in the Himalayas and across the river valleys of ancient India, scholars perfected a writing surface as delicate as it was durable birch bark, carefully peeled into thin, translucent sheets that could hold words for centuries. Unlike the rigid clay tablets of Mesopotamia or the weighty stone pillars of Egypt, these manuscripts were lightweight enough to carry on long journeys, yet astonishingly resilient. Buddhist monks would stitch folded bark pages between wooden covers, creating portable libraries that traveled along the Silk Road, spreading philosophy and medicine from India to the far corners of Asia. The process of crafting these manuscripts was an art in itself. Scribes selected only the finest inner bark from birch trees, boiling and pressing it until it became smooth and pliable. Using iron-tipped pens or brushes with plant-based inks, they inscribed sacred sutras, intricate medical diagrams, and lyrical poetry with painstaking precision. The bark's natural oils acted as a built-in preservative, repelling insects and resisting the humidity that would have destroyed paper or parchment in months. In the caves of Kashmir and the monasteries of Tibet, these manuscripts survived where other materials would have crumbled, proof that sometimes the most effective solutions come from working with nature rather than against it. Among their most precious contents were the earliest known texts of Ayurveda, detailing herbal remedies and surgical techniques that predate modern medicine by thousands of years. A single birch bark scroll might explain how to treat fever with neem leaves, set broken bones with bamboo splints, or perform cataract surgery using a curved needle, knowledge that flowed seamlessly from page to practice. Other manuscripts preserved Buddhist teachings so accurately that when modern scholars compared them to later paper copies, they found almost no discrepancies. The bark's stability had frozen wisdom in time, like a snapshot of ancient thought. Yet what's most striking is how these manuscripts embody sustainability. Unlike parchment made from animal skins or paper requiring pulped rags, birch bark was harvested without harming the tree. The outer layers regenerated over time. Scribes even reused older manuscripts, carefully scraping off faded ink to create palimpsests that held multiple layers of text. In an era before recycling bins, this was knowledge conservation in its purest form. Today, these fragile pages challenge our assumptions about permanence. Locked away in climate-controlled archives, they've outlasted empires, their letters still sharp under ultraviolet light. Some bear the fingerprints of long-gone scribes, pressed into the bark as they turned a page. Others show where monks repaired tears with thread, treating each manuscript as a living thing to be cherished. They remind us that preserving ideas isn't just about the medium, it's about the reverence we bring to the act of remembering. Standing like silent sentinels across the Irish landscape, the Ogam stones carry messages from a world where writing was as much about presence as it was about communication. The Celts didn't just inscribe their alphabet, they turned entire stone pillars into three-dimensional texts. Each carefully chiseled line, whether cutting across the stone's edge or branching from a central stem, was part of an ingenious system where position and angle transformed simple marks into a complete writing system. This wasn't pen on parchment. It was a tactile language meant to be felt as much as read, where fingers could trace knowledge as easily as eyes could scan it. What makes Ogham truly remarkable is its elegant simplicity. 20 distinct letters, each formed by groups of 1 to 5 notches or lines, could be carved quickly into wood or stone without elaborate tools. Scholars believe the system may have originated as a way to record Old Irish discreetly, perhaps even as a coded alternative to Latin during periods of cultural tension. The vertical stem line running up the edge of each stone acted as the backbone for these angular characters, turning boundary markers and memorials into stealthy repositories of names, territories, and lineages. Imagine walking past what appears to be an ordinary standing stone, only to discover it's actually declaring, "This land belongs to the descendants of Khan," in cryptic grooves. The surviving Ogham stones reveal how deeply this script was woven into daily life. Many functioned as early property deeds, their inscriptions marking the borders between kingdoms or commemorating important ancestors. Others bore brief memorials, not elaborate epitaphs, but stark declarations like X son of Y. Some stones even show bilingual inscriptions with Ogam alongside Latin, suggesting the script held its own against the empire's dominant language. The most fascinating examples appear near old roadways, where travelers might have used them as wayfinding markers, their inscriptions serving both practical and ceremonial purposes. Yet Ogham's brilliance lies in its adaptability. While most surviving examples are on stone, historical accounts describe its use on wooden sticks for more temporary messages, early medieval equivalents of notepads. The Irish epic, The Tale of the Táin, describes warriors sending Ogam inscribed wands as challenges or declarations, proving the system could shift between permanent record and fleeting communication. This dual nature speaks to an understanding that knowledge takes many forms, some meant to endure for centuries, others designed for the urgency of the moment. Today, over 400 Ogam stones still stand, their weathered surfaces challenging modern observers to decode their messages. Unlike the grand libraries of antiquity, these monuments required no special buildings or careful storage. They were knowledge made solid, designed to withstand time and weather through sheer physicality. Each groove represents a choice to carve memory into the landscape itself, transforming the very bones of the earth into pages waiting to be read. In their stubborn persistence, they remind us that preserving ideas doesn't always require complexity. Sometimes, all it takes is a steady hand and a stone that refuses to forget. In the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, where paper would dissolve into pulp within months, Buddhist monks perfected a writing surface that defied the elements. Palm leaves, carefully dried and trimmed into slender, golden pages. These weren't just makeshift scrolls, they were sacred canvases, their smooth surfaces etched with iron styluses to create grooves that would later be filled with ink made from soot and resin. Bound together with cords threaded through precisely drilled holes, these manuscripts became portable libraries of philosophy, medicine, and astronomy, their organic materials blending seamlessly with the rainforests that cradled them. The process of creating these manuscripts was a ritual in itself. Scribes selected only the youngest, most flexible leaves from talipot palms, boiling them in water infused with turmeric to prevent insect damage. Once dried, each leaf was polished with sandalwood paste until it gleamed a surface so flawless that even the tiniest characters could be inscribed with surgical precision. The stylus never tore the leaf. It merely pressed delicate channels into its waxy coating, allowing the ink to settle into permanent, raised lines. When completed, the leaves were stacked between wooden covers, often lavishly painted with scenes from the Buddha's life, then wrapped in cloth to protect them from moisture. In a climate where mold and insects devoured ordinary books, these manuscripts survived for centuries, their teachings preserved like seeds waiting to sprout. What's astonishing is the sheer volume of knowledge they carried. A single palm leaf bundle might contain the entire Pali Canon, Buddhism's foundational texts, spanning over 40,000 pages in modern print. Others held intricate medical diagrams showing pressure points for acupuncture, or star charts mapping planetary movements with surprising accuracy. In Sri Lanka, monks developed a specialized cursive script just for palm leaves, its rounded letters flowing like water to avoid sharp angles that might crack the delicate surface. The leaves even influenced the shape of language itself. Because erasures were impossible, scribes perfected an error-free writing style, and the narrow format encouraged concise, poetic phrasing that became a hallmark of classical Southeast Asian literature. But the true miracle of these manuscripts lies in their resilience. During periods of war or invasion, monasteries would bury them in sealed clay pots or hide them in mountain caves, knowing the leaves could endure where paper would perish. In Thailand, the humid air that threatened other materials actually kept the palm supple, preventing brittleness. Some manuscripts bear traces of temple fires, their edges charred but their inked letters still legible, having survived flames that consumed the wooden shelves around them. Even today, conservators marvel at their durability. A well-preserved palm leaf text from the 12th century can feel as flexible as the day it was made, its ink still jet black under magnification. The palm leaf tradition reveals a profound truth about preservation. Sometimes the best way to safeguard knowledge isn't to fight nature, but to collaborate with it. These manuscripts required no artificial chemicals or temperature-controlled vaults, just an intimate understanding of local materials and climates. In their silent resistance to time, they embody the Buddhist principle of impermanence and continuity, showing how wisdom can outlast empires when it's woven into the very fabric of the natural world. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, Easter Island scholars carved their secrets into wood with shark teeth and obsidian blades, creating the mysterious Rongorongo script, a puzzle that has defied translation for centuries. These intricately notched wooden tablets, some over 6 feet long, bear rows of tiny figures, human forms, birds, plants, and geometric shapes, all arranged in a bizarre reverse boustrophedon pattern, where every other line flips upside down like a plow turning back across a field. What makes these tablets extraordinary isn't just their undeciphered symbols. It's the tragic story of how an entire intellectual tradition bloomed in isolation, then was severed at the root. The surviving tablets hint at a sophisticated system of record-keeping, possibly tracking royal lineages, harvest cycles, or the island's haunting Moai statue construction. Some scholars believe the glyphs represent a form of proto-writing, not quite a full alphabet, but a complex mnemonic device where each symbol triggered oral recitations of sacred knowledge. Imagine a priest running his fingers along the grooves, using them as prompts to recite hours of genealogies or creation myths verbatim. The parallels to the quipu and memory palace techniques are striking another example of human ingenuity, finding wildly different solutions to the same universal problem: how to hold onto what matters. But Rongorongo's greatest mystery is its sudden disappearance. By the time European missionaries arrived in the 1860s, only a handful of elderly islanders could even name the script. None could read it. The island's ecological collapse, exacerbated by deforestation and societal upheaval, had erased not just the means to produce new tablets. No trees remained to carve, but the very knowledge of how to interpret them. The few surviving tablets were scattered across museums and private collections, their context lost forever. Today, only 26 authentic examples remain, each one a silent witness to a catastrophe of forgetting. What chills modern researchers isn't just the script's undeciphered state, it's the realization that Rongorongo may represent a dead end in the history of writing. Unlike cuneiform or hieroglyphs, which evolved into descendant scripts, Rongorongo appears to have been invented independently, a lone spark of literary innovation in the vast Pacific. Its glyphs share no clear connection with any other writing system, making it exponentially harder to crack. Some symbols resemble petroglyphs found on the island's rocks, suggesting the script may have bridged art and language in ways we've yet to comprehend. The tragedy of Rongorongo isn't just a story of ecological mismanagement, it's a parable about the fragility of knowledge itself. These tablets survived wars, slave raids, and near-total cultural disruption, yet the keys to understanding them slipped away in just a generation or two. They stand as a warning: every system we invent to store knowledge, from cloud servers to stone carvings, is only as durable as the living tradition that sustains it. The Easter Islanders didn't just lose their script, they lost the voices that could bring it back to life. Deep within the temple complex of Abidos, where most visitors gaze up at the towering depictions of gods and pharaohs, the real marvel lies in the shadows' hieroglyphs, so precise they functioned as an ancient spreadsheet for the heavens. Among these, the so-called helicopter carvings have sparked wild theories, but their true significance is far more profound. These overlapping hieroglyphs aren't evidence of time travelers or lost technology. They're palimpsests, layers of sacred text where priests updated astronomical data across generations. Each chisel mark was a meticulous correction, ensuring that celestial events could be predicted with pinpoint accuracy centuries later. What sets the Abidos inscriptions apart is their dual purpose. While temple walls displayed public myths and victories, These hidden corridors held the technical manuals of priest scientists. Detailed star charts tracked Sirius's rising to predict Nile floods, while lunar cycles were logged to schedule religious festivals. The precision is staggering. Some alignments account for the slight wobble in Earth's axis, a phenomenon ancient astronomers shouldn't have been able to detect without telescopes. Yet there it is, encoded in stone, knowledge so vital it was literally baked into the architecture. The temple's orientation itself served as a giant calendar, with solstice sunlight striking specific hieroglyphs like a cosmic read button lighting up stored data. The genius of this system lay in its redundancy. Unlike fragile papyrus scrolls, these carvings survived wars, fires, and the rise and fall of dynasties. Even if invading armies looted gold or burned libraries, the walls remained, a backup hardwired into the bedrock of Egyptian civilization. And because only initiated priests could interpret the full meaning behind the symbols, the knowledge was protected from casual alteration. Modern researchers have found subtle notches beside certain glyphs, almost like version control tags in software, showing where calculations were refined over time without erasing the original record. Yet the Abidos hieroglyphs also reveal a universal truth about how societies safeguard their most precious knowledge. By embedding astronomy in sacred space, the Egyptians ensured its preservation wasn't just practical, it was a divine duty. No pharaoh would dare chisel away texts that connected mortals to the god's celestial order. In an age when data can vanish with a power outage, these stone archives whisper a lesson. Sometimes the most resilient storage isn't the most convenient, but the most irreplaceable. The helicopter glyphs that baffle tourists today, they're not glitches, they're proof of a civilization so committed to preserving truth, they turned their temples into immortal hard drives. Scattered across Scandinavia like frozen echoes of the Viking Age, Roonstones transformed the very ground beneath Norse feet into a library of conquests, laws, and legacies. These weren't mere markers, they were multisensory monuments where touch, sight, and even sound played roles in preserving knowledge. Picture a traveler resting their palm against the weathered grooves of a runestone near Uppsala, feeling the younger Futhok alphabet's angular letters cut deep enough to cast shadows at midday. Each rune was more than a letter. Its shape held magical significance, its placement a deliberate choice between public declaration and hidden meaning. Some stones bore straightforward memorials. This stone was raised by Gunnar in memory of his brother Bjorn, while others concealed elaborate word puzzles, their true messages legible only to those who knew how to skip certain runes or read alternate lines. What made these stones revolutionary was their adaptability. As Vikings raided, traded, and settled from Constantinople to Newfoundland, their runic system morphed to accommodate local languages. The same rune that represented a B in Old Norse might stand for a P sound in Anglo-Saxon territories, allowing the script to cross linguistic borders effortlessly. The Rökstone in Sweden takes this flexibility to dazzling extremes. Its 700 runes weave together riddles, ancestral sagas, and even coded references to heroic legends, all while switching between multiple cipher techniques mid-inscription. Modern linguists have spent decades untangling its layers, proving these weren't crude carvings but sophisticated compositions meant to challenge and delight future generations. But the true stroke of genius lay in their permanence and placement. Unlike fragile parchment that stayed sheltered in monasteries, runestones were planted at crossroads, harbors, and assembly sites, strategic locations where they'd be seen daily. The Jelling stones in Denmark, commissioned by King Harald Bluetooth, literally anchored royal propaganda into the landscape, their runes declaring his unification of Denmark and Norway while towering over a busy trade route. Others functioned as legal documents, like the Hillsure Stone's intricate inheritance claims that settled property disputes for centuries. By merging geography with memory, Vikings created a self-sustaining system. The stone's physical presence reminded people to maintain the oral traditions that gave them context, while the stories ensured no one forgot how to read the rune. Some stones took secrecy further, employing cipher techniques that would impress modern cryptographers. The cipher twig system rearranged runes into grids or attached them to cryptic drawings, turning simple inscriptions into treasure maps or battle plans. The Gumap stone's inscription appears nonsensical until you realize its runes must be mirrored and read backward, a precaution against rival clans intercepting sensitive messages. Others used kennings, poetic metaphors that concealed names behind phrases like breaker of rings, a generous ruler, or feeder of ravens, a warrior. This blend of practicality and poetry reveals a culture that treated knowledge as both weapon and heirloom, to be guarded as fiercely as any sword. Today, these stones challenge our digital age assumptions about accessibility versus preservation. While we struggle with obsolete file formats and vanishing social media posts, runestones from the 9th century remain perfectly legible, their messages uncorrupted by time. They stand as monuments to a radical idea that sometimes the best way to safeguard knowledge isn't to hide it away, but to carve it into the world so deeply that erosion itself becomes part of the story. Each chip and weathering pattern adds to their authenticity, proving that durability and visibility aren't opposing forces, but partners in the eternal fight against forgetting. Long before the invention of paper revolutionized record-keeping, Chinese scholars mastered the art of writing on bamboo, one slender strip at a time. These bamboo slip books transformed knowledge preservation into a tactile, almost musical experience, each strip clacking softly against the others as readers unfurled scrolls of wisdom tied with delicate silk cords. Picture a military strategist in the Han Dynasty unrolling a bamboo bundle to study Sun Tzu's tactics, or a physician referencing thin slats inscribed with herbal remedies that would later vanish from history. The process itself was a marvel of precision. Scribes split bamboo stalks into strips as thin as a finger, smoothed their surfaces with sand, then painted characters vertically with fine brushes using ink made from pine soot and lacquer. Once dried, the slips were arranged in sequence and threaded together with 2 or 3 parallel cords, creating flexible pages that could be rolled for storage or laid flat for study. What made these bamboo books extraordinary wasn't just their durability, though they outlasted early paper by centuries in humid tombs, but their capacity for revision. Unlike rigid clay tablets or costly silk scrolls, bamboo slips could be easily reordered. A philosopher might add new strips to expand an argument, or a historian might insert corrections by threading additional slips into the existing sequence. Some excavated bundles even show where scribes scraped away old text to reuse slips, creating palimpsests that now reveal multiple layers of thought. The famous Mawangdui discoveries included bamboo slips recording the Wuxia Bingfang, a medical text listing 52 diseases and their treatments, some involving ingredients still used in traditional Chinese medicine today. Other slips preserved legal statutes so detailed they specified fines for Chinese letter government officials who failed to report crimes within 10 days. The organizational genius of these slipbooks foreshadowed modern information systems. To navigate lengthy texts, scribes added notches or colored markers to key strips, functioning like primitive page numbers. Some bundles included title slips identifying the work, while others were stored in labeled lacquer boxes resembling ancient filing cabinets. The military strategist Zhu Liang was said to carry bamboo books into battle, their compact rolls fitting into saddlebags that would have been impractical for bulkier materials. Even the physical act of reading bamboo slips encouraged careful engagement, unlike scrolling through digital text. Handling each strip required deliberate attention to order and context, turning study into an active dialogue with the material. Yet the true testament to bamboo's resilience lies in the tombs where they were buried. In one astounding discovery, archaeologists found over 5,000 slips in a waterlogged Qin dynasty well, their characters still legible after 2 millennia underwater. The bamboo's natural silica content had resisted decay, while the anaerobic environment prevented oxidation. These slips preserved the Qin laws, revealing a legal system obsessed with standardization right down to the required width of cart axles. Other tombs yielded slips documenting celestial events, with precise dates that helped modern astronomers verify ancient supernova sightings. Bamboo slip books represent a paradox of fragility and endurance. Individual strips could snap or fray, yet properly stored bundles survived fires that consumed paper archives. They were democratic in their affordability, accessible to students and officials alike, yet sophisticated enough to convey the empire's most guarded secrets. In their delicate chords and subtle notches, we see the roots of modern information management, a system where knowledge wasn't just stored, but organized, accessible, and above all, designed to endure the chaos of time. The very fact that we can read a merchant's inventory or a doctor's notes from 2,000 years ago is a testament to the bamboo's quiet rebellion against oblivion. While the Inca knotted quipus across mountain ranges, Hawaiian chiefs wove their own version of history into fiber cord records so precise they could settle disputes over land, power, and ancestry with a single tug. These weren't mere ropes, they were three-dimensional archives, their twists and loops encoding everything from royal bloodlines to the exact boundaries of taro fields. The Alii, Hawaii's ruling class, entrusted this tactile system to special keepers who could read the chords like a blind person reads Braille, translating physical patterns into oral recitations of law and legend. Imagine a courtroom where evidence wasn't presented on parchment, but demonstrated through the tension of carefully arranged strands, each not a witness to truths older than written language. What set Hawaiian cord records apart was their dual role as both ledger and legal document. A series of interconnected loops might map an island's ahupu, a system, wedge-shaped land divisions stretching from mountain to sea, with different colors representing fishing rights, irrigation channels, or sacred sites. Chiefs used them to allocate resources during droughts, ensuring fairness by physically adjusting the cords to reflect changing conditions. The famed Chief Liloa even carried a personal cord recording his lineage, its intricate braids serving as his diplomatic passport. When unrolled before rival leaders, those fibers held more authority than any seal or signature, their knots vetted by generations of memory specialists. The system's brilliance lay in its resistance to tampering. Unlike written records that could be forged or altered, these cords required communal verification. Only trained kahuna priests knew the full coding system, and any attempt to modify a knot would disrupt the entire pattern, triggering immediate suspicion. Some cords incorporated rare feathers or shells at critical junctures, making substitutions impossible without detection. This built-in authentication made them ideal for tracking tribute payments or treaty terms. Every fisherman and farmer could trust the cords because their integrity was literally tied to the physical record. Yet these cords were more than administrative tools, they were living narratives. Woven into their strands were creation chants, navigation routes, and even medicinal knowledge. A single cord bundle might contain the migration story of a family's ancestral canoe, with knots marking stops across the Pacific. Others preserved the exact recipes for healing potions, with different fibers representing ingredients and quantities. The kahuna didn't just recite this knowledge, they performed it, using the chords as prompts for rhythmic chants that turned data into art. This fusion of utility and beauty ensured the information stuck, passed down through song and touch rather than silent ink. Tragically, this system faced near total eradication after Western contact. Missionaries dismissed the chords as pagan relics, burning countless examples as part of cultural reform. Only a handful survived, tucked away in caves or passed secretly between families. Today, scholars and native Hawaiian practitioners are piecing together fragments of the code, comparing surviving chords with oral histories to reconstruct this tactile language. Their work reveals a profound truth. Sometimes the most sophisticated systems leave the faintest traces. These knotted threads held entire worlds of knowledge, their strength lying not in permanence, but in the collective memory they orchestrated a symphony of fingers, voices, and fibers singing history into the future. Buried beneath the ashes of a Minoan palace on Crete lies one of archaeology's most tantalizing puzzles, the Phaistos Disc. This palm-sized clay disc, baked hard over 3,000 years ago, isn't just an artifact, it's a time capsule of lost innovation. Both faces spiral inward with 45 distinct pictographs, men running, birds in flight, shields, even beehives, each symbol crisply stamped into the clay-like typeface on a printing press. That's the real shocker. This isn't hand-carved text. Every mark was made with reusable stamps, making the disc the world's earliest known example of movable type, predating Gutenberg by millennia. The precision of those stamps upends everything we thought we knew about Bronze Age technology. Each symbol was pressed into the clay with consistent depth and alignment, suggesting a workshop stocked with carefully crafted punches. Imagine artisans reaching for a bird stamp, then a fish, arranging them in sequences to convey meaning, a process eerily similar to setting modern type. Yet unlike later printing, which spread rapidly once invented, the Phaistos Disc stands alone. No other stamped texts from this era have ever been found, leaving us to wonder, was this a brilliant dead end or evidence of a wider tradition lost to time? Deciphering the disc's message has become a linguistic Mount Everest. The pictographs don't match any known writing system, and without a bilingual Rosetta Stone equivalent, even the direction of reading remains contested. Some scholars argue the spiral starts at the edge and winds inward. Others insist it's meant to be read outward like ripples in a pond. Proposed translations range from a hymn to a mother goddess to a tax ledger, but what's undeniable is the disc's sophistication. Certain symbol groupings repeat like refrains, hinting at poetic structure, while others appear only once, perhaps names or locations. The very fact that stamps were used implies an intention to reproduce the text, raising the tantalizing possibility that other copies await discovery in undiscovered Minoan vaults. What makes the Phaistos Disc truly haunting isn't just its undeciphered script, it's the shadow it casts over history. Here was a civilization advanced enough to develop precursor technologies to printing, yet all traces of their methods vanished. No stamps, no trial pieces, no instruction manuals survived. The disc's isolation suggests a chilling scenario, that the Minoans might have been on the brink of an information revolution when volcanic eruptions or invasions snuffed out their progress. It's a reminder that technological leaps aren't inevitable. They're fragile, contingent on the survival of the cultures that nurture them. Modern imaging techniques reveal new clues, microscopic tool marks proving the stamps were metal, not wood or stone, and subtle clay variations suggesting the disc was fired at low temperature, possibly for ritual purposes. Some symbols bear uncanny resemblance to later Cypriot scripts, hinting at threads of influence stretching across centuries. Yet the disc stubbornly guards its secrets, challenging us to consider how much knowledge has evaporated like morning mist. In its silent, spiraling symbols, we confront the most humbling truth of all, that entire systems of thought can disappear, leaving behind only echoes and a clay disc that refuses to speak. High in the Himalayan monasteries where parchment would crumble in the thin, dry air, Tibetan monks devised a storage system that turned devotion into data preservation, the prayer wheel library. These towering cylinders, some reaching over 9 feet tall, weren't just spiritual tools. They were ingenious archives, their hollow interiors packed tightly with scrolls inscribed with thousands of pages of Buddhist scriptures. Every rotation sent sacred texts swirling past the viewer's eyes, not in words, but in intention, a single spin believed to impart the merit of reading all the enclosed texts, transforming physical motion into spiritual absorption. The engineering behind these wheels was as meticulous as the calligraphy on the scrolls within. Constructed from durable metals like brass or copper, their exteriors were often etched with mantras, while the interiors held tightly wound scrolls, sometimes entire volumes of the Kagyu Buddhist teachings or Tengya commentaries. Smaller handheld versions allowed pilgrims to read while walking, but the monumental stationary wheels housed in temple courtyards functioned as communal libraries. Their design capitalized on vertical space in crowded monasteries, storing what would have required entire rooms of shelves in a single rotating column. The scrolls themselves were masterpieces of compression, written in dense, tiny script on long strips of paper or silk, then rolled around wooden dowels for stability. This system embodied a radical rethinking of what it means to preserve knowledge. Unlike locked-away manuscripts that risked decay from handling, these texts were protected by their very motion. The scrolls rarely needed unrolling, as their spiritual essence was transmitted through rotation rather than literal reading. Humidity that might damage exposed pages was mitigated by the sealed metal chambers, while the constant movement deterred insects. Some wheels even incorporated sacred substances like powdered gemstones or medicinal herbs within their chambers, infusing the texts with added layers of meaning. The prayer wheel's true innovation lay in its democratization of access. In a society where literacy was limited, the wheels allowed everyone, from scholars to shepherds, to engage with complex philosophies through tactile participation. Pilgrims circumambulating a temple might spin dozens of wheels in a single ritual walk, their hands accumulating not just spiritual merit but fragments of wisdom encoded in the scroll's vibrations. Modern researchers have noted that the rhythmic motion itself may have enhanced memory retention, turning rote physical action into a mnemonic device for oral teachings. Yet these sacred libraries also served a pragmatic purpose in preserving vulnerable texts. During political upheavals, some monasteries discreetly removed controversial scriptures from shelves and sealed them within prayer wheels where their presence went unnoticed by outsiders. The famed Jokhang Temple in Lhasa still houses wheels containing 8th century texts that might have otherwise been lost to time, their contents safeguarded not by locks but by reverence. Today, the prayer wheel's legacy challenges our digital age assumptions about knowledge consumption. In an era of skim reading and endless scrolling, these spinning libraries remind us that engagement with wisdom can be layered, sometimes literal, sometimes symbolic, but always intentional. The gentle creak of their rotation whispers an ancient truth: that preservation isn't just about saving words, but sustaining the living connection between those words and the hands and hearts that bring them to life. Hidden in the dry cliffs near the Nile, a farmer digging for fertilizer in 1945 stumbled upon something far more precious than the sabak soil he sought: a sealed clay jar containing 13 leather-bound books. These weren't just ancient texts, they were heretical gospels, buried for safekeeping 16 centuries earlier by believers who knew their sacred writings were being hunted to extinction. The Nag Hammadi Codices, named after the nearby town, represent one of history's most dramatic rescues of forbidden knowledge, not through elaborate encryption or royal decrees, but through the simple act of being tucked away in darkness. What makes these codices revolutionary isn't just their survival, it's the worldview they preserved. While mainstream Christianity consolidated its canon, these texts offered startling alternatives. Gospels where Jesus shared secret wisdom with Mary Magdalene, dialogues portraying the material world as a flawed creation, and poems describing the divine as both masculine and feminine. Written in Coptic on delicate parchment, their very existence proved that early Christianity was a kaleidoscope of beliefs, not a monolithic tradition. Some scholars believe they were hidden by monks from the nearby St. Pachomius monastery, who risked excommunication to protect teachings deemed too dangerous for the emerging orthodoxy. The craftsmanship of these codices reveals their importance. Unlike scrolls, which could only be read linearly, these were true books paginated, bound, and designed for study. Scribes treated the leather covers with alum and tannins to repel insects, while the inks contained iron gall and carbon for permanence. Some pages show careful corrections, proving they weren't hastily made copies but cherished reference works. The Gospel of Thomas alone, with its 114 sayings of Jesus, appended assumptions about the New Testament by presenting a Christianity focused on inner enlightenment rather than institutional authority. Yet the codices' greatest power lies in what they represent about preservation under persecution. Their owners didn't hide them in a library or temple where they might be confiscated. They chose a remote cave, sealing them in jars like time capsules meant for future generations. This was knowledge conservation as an act of defiance, a refusal to let certain ideas vanish simply because they fell out of favor. Modern carbon dating suggests the books were buried around the same time as the Athanasian decree condemning non-canonical texts, turning their concealment into what one scholar called the quietest protest in history. Today, these weathered pages challenge our notions of religious history. Where official church records present a tidy evolution of doctrine, the Nag Hammadi texts reveal the vibrant chaos of early belief. The roads not taken, the voices suppressed. Their survival reminds us that sometimes the surest way to safeguard truth isn't to display it proudly, but to wrap it in leather, seal it in clay, and trust that the right hands will dig it up when the world is ready to listen. 17 centuries before infographics became a modern obsession, the Aztecs perfected the art of visual storytelling through their pictorial codices, vibrant manuscripts where history lived in bursts of crimson cochineal dye and intricate glyphs. Picture a royal scribe dipping his brush into pigments made from crushed insects, minerals, and even precious lapis lazuli, carefully painting the conquests of Emperor Ahuitzotl across amatl paper folded like an accordion. These weren't mere illustrations, they were sophisticated hybrid documents blending art, writing, and data visualization into a single flowing narrative. The few surviving examples, like the Codex Mendoza, reveal a civilization that understood the power of images to transcend language, a quality that made these books indispensable tools for governing an empire of diverse cultures and tongues. What set Aztec codices apart was their layered intelligence. A single page could simultaneously function as a tax ledger, a historical record, and a religious text. The Codex Mendoza, created for Spanish Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza around 1541, is a masterclass in this multidimensional approach. One section details tributes paid by conquered cities, not with dry lists, but with vivid depictions of jade beads, feathered headdresses, and bags of cocoa beans, each item quantified by small dots arranged like modern tally marks. Another section traces Aztec rulers' reigns through symbolic events: a temple burning to mark a rebellion, a speech scroll indicating a ruler's edict, or a war shield representing expansion. The images followed a strict visual grammar. Water was shown as blue swirls, conquests as burning temples, and time's passage through footprints along winding paths. The true genius of this system lay in its universality. In an empire where Nahuatl coexisted with dozens of regional languages, Pictorial codices allowed bureaucrats from Tenochtitlan to administer distant provinces without relying solely on interpreters. A tribute collector could unfold a codex before local leaders, pointing to standardized symbols for maize, cotton, or rubber, and immediately convey expectations. This visual language was so effective that Spanish administrators later adopted it for their own records, creating hybrid documents like the Codex Osuna, which combined Aztec glyphs with Spanish annotations. Even today, scholars note how these images convey emotions modern text-based records often miss: the slumped posture of a defeated warrior, the joyful swirl of a festival dancer, or the meticulous detail in a medicinal herb's leaves. Yet the survival of these codices is a story of resilience against destruction. When Spanish friars like Diego de Landa burned thousands of manuscripts as works of the devil, Aztec scribes adapted. Some hid sacred knowledge within seemingly innocuous colonial-era books, embedding traditional glyphs alongside Christian imagery. Others recreated lost histories from memory, producing post-conquest codices that preserved pre-Hispanic knowledge under the guise of educating missionaries. The Florentine Codex, a monumental 16-volume work compiled by Franciscan friar Bernardino de Sahagun with indigenous collaborators, became a Trojan horse, its pages bursting with Aztec medicinal recipes, creation myths, and even descriptions of marketplaces, all recorded in both Nahuatl and Spanish. What makes these manuscripts haunting is their unfinished revolution. The Aztecs were on the verge of developing a fully phonetic writing system when conquest disrupted their intellectual evolution. Some late codices show glyphs beginning to represent sounds, rather than just objects or ideas, a potential path toward a writing system as versatile as Maya script. Today, these surviving pages challenge our assumptions about literacy and history. They prove that complex knowledge can flourish without alphabets, and that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't written in words, but painted in the vibrant hues of a civilization's collective memory. At the bottom of the Aegean Sea, encrusted with centuries of marine growth, lay a corroded lump of bronze that would rewrite history. When sponge divers discovered the Antikythera Mechanism in 1901, they initially mistook it for a piece of nautical equipment until archaeologists noticed the intricate gear teeth peeking through the calcified crust. What emerged after meticulous restoration was nothing short of astonishing: an ancient Greek device so advanced it wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. This wasn't just a tool, it was a mechanical brain, its interlocking bronze gears forming a cosmic calculator capable of predicting solar eclipses, tracking planetary movements, and even counting down to the next Olympic Games. Every aspect of the mechanism reveals meticulous engineering. The main gear, precisely 223 teeth matching the Saros eclipse cycle, meshed with smaller dials to simulate the irregular motions of the moon. Tiny inscriptions served as a user manual, explaining how to read the positions of celestial bodies across zodiac scales. The back housed two spiral dials, one marking upcoming Panhellenic Games, the other predicting lunar and solar eclipses down to the hour. What's staggering is the precision modern CT scans show some gears have teeth cut to within a millimeter of perfection, achieved without magnifying lenses or precision tools we'd consider essential today. This level of craftsmanship suggests the mechanism wasn't a one-off experiment, but part of a tradition of gear-based computation now lost to time. The genius of this device lies in how it transcended traditional knowledge storage. While scribes recorded star positions on papyrus, the Antikythera Mechanism encoded celestial patterns in three-dimensional metal. Turning its handle activated a miniature cosmos, where the relationships between planets became tangible physics rather than abstract tables. Scholars now believe it may have been based on the work of Archimedes or Hipparchus figures, who understood that modeling the heavens required more than words or numbers. It was a radical idea that information could live in the interplay of moving parts, where turning gears might reveal truths about the universe itself. Yet the mechanism's survival is a story of pure serendipity. The ship carrying it likely sank around 60 BCE while transporting looted Greek treasures to Rome. Had it reached its destination, it might have been melted down for scrap or lost to the chaos of history. Instead, 2 millennia underwater preserved its secrets like a time capsule. Today, reconstructions prove its accuracy. When set to July 22, 87 BCE, the device correctly shows the position of Venus as a morning star, just as ancient observers would have seen it. What haunts researchers isn't just the mechanism's complexity, it's the realization that this lone survivor hints at a vanished world of mechanical intellect. Cicero wrote of a similar device built by Archimedes that replicated planetary motions. Might entire workshops have produced such wonders? The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a fragment of a lost technological lineage, proving that the ancients didn't just store knowledge, they engineered it into being. Rolled tightly around worn wooden dowels and tucked into leather pouches, Ethiopian magic scrolls transformed sacred knowledge into something you could wear against your skin. These weren't just religious artifacts, they were portable pharmacies, spiritual shields, and literacy primers all in one. Their parchment surfaces covered in dense Jais script interspersed with vivid drawings of crosses, angels, and mythical beasts. Imagine a farmer in the highlands of Tigray reaching into his tunic to unroll a scroll when illness struck, tracing the inked prayers with his finger as he recited them aloud, the very act of touch activating the word's healing power. This was knowledge preservation at its most intimate, where texts became living talismans, carried close to the heart through every hardship. What set these scrolls apart was their seamless fusion of practicality and mysticism. A single scroll might begin with verses from the Psalms, transition into herbal remedies for fever, then conclude with intricate diagrams to ward off the evil eye. The Jais script, one of Africa's oldest continuously used writing systems, lent the words sacred weight, but the real genius lay in their organization. Scribes employed a system of visual markers, red ink for urgent protective prayers, black for medicinal instructions, and elaborate knotwork borders to separate sections. Some scrolls stretched over 10 feet when fully unfurled, yet could be rolled compact enough to fit in a pocket, their contents meticulously structured for quick reference in crises. Modern scholars have identified scrolls functioning as everything from pediatric care manuals, with specific prayers for teething infants, to agricultural guides with blessings to protect crops from locusts. The scroll's durability was no accident. Parchment made from goat or sheep hide was scraped thin, then treated with a paste of crushed tamarind seeds and lemon juice to resist moisture and insects. Scribes used iron-rich inks that darkened over time rather than fading, ensuring legibility through years of handling. But the true preservation miracle was cultural. Because these scrolls were believed to lose potency if damaged, owners maintained them with reverence, periodically anointing them with sacred oils or storing them in cedarwood boxes to repel moths. This combination of physical care and spiritual value created a self-reinforcing system where knowledge survived because it was seen as alive. Perhaps the most revolutionary aspect was how they democratized literacy. In a region where formal education was limited, the scrolls made reading a daily necessity rather than an elite privilege. Even those who couldn't write often memorized passages through constant handling, creating a grassroots network of textual engagement. Some scrolls included simplified syllabaries, early literacy tools teaching the Jazz alphabet through repetitive holy phrases. A 17th century scroll now in the British Library shows how scribes sometimes added pronunciation guides beside difficult words, transforming sacred calligraphy into something approachable for beginners. Today, these scrolls challenge our separation of medicine, religion, and education. Where modern society boxes these disciplines into distinct categories, the Ethiopian tradition wove them into a single resilient thread. The surviving scrolls, many still in private collections, carry stains from fingertips, sweat, and holy oils. Each mark a testament to hands that turned parchment into something more than a document. They remind us that knowledge endures best when it's not locked away in vaults, but carried into the world, folded into the fabric of daily survival, and believed in so deeply that its preservation becomes second nature. Tucked away in the dry, echoing caves near the Dead Sea, a Bedouin shepherd tossing rocks into a dark crevice in 1947 accidentally sparked one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. What his stray stone struck wasn't just pottery. It was a ceramic jar protecting leather scrolls so perfectly preserved that their Hebrew lettering remained crisp after 2 millennia. These Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden by a Jewish sect called the Essenes around the time of Jesus, weren't mere fragments. They were near-complete copies of biblical books like Isaiah, along with never-before-seen community rules, apocalyptic visions, and even detailed star charts. The desert air, with its relentless dryness and stable temperatures, had acted as a natural time capsule, stopping decay in its tracks. While libraries in Rome and Alexandria turned to dust, these scrolls survived intact, their delicate parchment untouched by mold or insects, proof that sometimes the harshest environments become unexpected allies in the fight against time. What makes these texts extraordinary isn't just their age, but their transformative impact on history. Before their discovery, the oldest complete Hebrew Bible dated to the 9th century. Suddenly, scholars held manuscripts 1,000 years older, revealing how accurately scribes had copied sacred texts across generations. The Isaiah scroll, stretching 24 feet when unrolled, matched later versions with near-perfect precision, a testament to the meticulousness of ancient scribble schools. Yet other scrolls, like the War of the Sons of Light against the Sons of Darkness, unveiled radical beliefs lost to mainstream Judaism, detailed battle plans for a holy war, references to a mysterious teacher of righteousness, and rituals involving angelic worship. These weren't just religious documents, they were snapshots of a vibrant, alternative Judaism that flourished in the wilderness, far from the temple in Jerusalem. The scroll's preservation is a masterclass in environmental adaptation. The Essenes didn't rely on fancy technology or sealed vaults, they understood their landscape. They chose caves with stable humidity levels, stored scrolls in cylindrical jars sealed with bitumen, and wrote on parchment treated with salts from the Dead Sea itself, creating a natural barrier against decay. Modern conservators now replicate these conditions in museum labs, using climate-controlled cases that mimic the cave's aridity. It's a humbling realization. Those ancient scribes achieved with local knowledge what today's scientists accomplish with sensors and algorithms. Yet the scroll's survival is also a story of intentional secrecy. Scholars believe the Essenes hid their library as Roman legions advanced during the First Jewish Revolt, stashing their most precious texts in 11 remote caves rather than risk their destruction. The very act of concealment, meant to protect the scrolls from immediate danger, ended up preserving them for future millennia. Ironically, the Roman soldiers who might have burned the texts as subversive never found them, while the Essenes themselves likely perished, leaving no one alive to retrieve the hidden trove. The scrolls waited silently, their secrets intact, until a chance rock's toss shattered their isolation. Today, the Dead Sea Scrolls challenge our assumptions about fragility and endurance. Their leather and ink endured because they were shielded not by human guardians but by the desert's endless breath, a reminder that preservation isn't always about control. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back and let the earth itself become your archive. As digital storage systems obsolesce and cloud servers falter, these ancient pages whisper an unexpected lesson: that the surest way to save something for the future might be to bury it in the right patch of wilderness, then trust the silence to do the rest. Inside the serene gaze of 1,000 Buddha statues across Japan lies one of history's most ingenious acts of literary defiance, hollowed-out sculptures whispering with concealed scriptures. These Kansuban, or dry books, transform devotional art into covert archives, their bellies stuffed with tightly rolled sutras wrapped in silk. Picture a 14th century monk painstakingly hollowing out a wooden bodhisattva's torso, inserting sacred texts among wood shavings before sealing the cavity with a discreet panel. To worshippers, the statue remained an object of reverence. To the initiated, it was a Trojan horse of wisdom, safeguarding teachings during waves of anti-Buddhist persecution that saw monasteries raided and libraries burned. The craftsmanship behind these hidden libraries was as meticulous as it was secretive. Artisans carved special compartments beneath gilded lacquer, often accessible only by removing a statue's removable crown or base plate. Some Kansuban were designed with false backs, their openings concealed behind layers of painted lotus motifs or disguised as natural wood grain. The texts themselves, written on ultra-thin paper or silk, were sometimes treated with insect-repelling camphor or wrapped in metal foil to deter silverfish. A single statue might contain an entire Buddhist canon, its rolled scrolls arranged like nesting dolls within the hollow core. The Horyuji Temple's famous Yumichigai canon, for instance, holds over 30 sutras inside its 8th century frame, undisturbed for centuries until modern X-rays revealed their presence. What makes the Kansuban revolutionary isn't just their concealment, it's how they exploited the psychology of oppression. Persecutors might smash altars or confiscate books, but few dared desecrate sacred images. By embedding texts within objects of veneration, monks weaponized their enemies' superstitions against them. During the violent suppression of Buddhism in the Meiji era, when militant Shintoists destroyed thousands of temples, these clandestine statues often escaped scrutiny. Some were even carried to safety by fleeing priests, their lightweight hollow construction making them easier to transport than heavy chests of scrolls. The Kansuban became nomadic libraries, their contents migrating under the guise of devotional objects. Yet the true brilliance of this system lay in its dual purpose. Unlike buried caches or walled-up manuscripts, these hidden texts remained accessible to initiates through ritual. A senior monk might reveal a statue's secret during esoteric ceremonies, turning the act of retrieval into a sacred rite. Some compartments were engineered to produce a resonant hum when opened, a sonic marker ensuring the texts were handled reverently. The statues themselves often bore subtle clues to their contents. A medicine Buddha with hidden medical treatises might hold a herbal twig instead of the usual jewel, while a canon of compassion could have her sutras wrapped in cloth dyed with tearshell blue, a pigment associated with healing. Modern discoveries continue to unveil the Kansuban's legacy. In 2014, restorers at Kyoto's Rokuharamitsu-ji found a previously unknown cavity in an 11-foot-tall Amida Buddha, containing a complete lotus sutra dated to the Kamakura period. The scroll's colophon revealed it was hidden during the 13th century Mongol invasions, proving these statues served as time capsules for multiple crises. Other finds include texts wrapped in battle-torn monk robes or interred with grains of temple rice, physical prayers for survival. The Kansuban whisper a radical idea that preservation sometimes requires disguise. In a world where knowledge is still threatened by ideology and erasure, these hollow Buddhas stand as silent sentinels of resistance. They remind us that ideas can outlast their oppressors not through confrontation, but through the quiet cunning of shape-shifting when words become art and art becomes sanctuary. Locked away in Yale University's Voynich Library, the Voynich Manuscript doesn't just defy translation, it mocks the very idea of comprehension. This 15th century puzzle, roughly 240 pages of vellum covered in looping, alien script and surreal botanical drawings, has resisted cryptographers, linguists, and even wartime codebreakers for over a century. Flip through its pages and you'll encounter plants that don't exist, naked women bathing in green liquid, and celestial charts that rearrange known astronomy into impossible configurations. The text flows smoothly with clear word and sentence structures, yet every attempt to match it to known languages or cipher systems collapses. This isn't just a locked book, it's a mirror reflecting our limitations back at us, proving that even in an age of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, some codes refuse to crack. What makes the Voynich so maddening is its paradoxical sophistication. Carbon dating confirms the vellum's medieval origin, while the ink's chemical composition matches 15th century recipes. The script shows statistical patterns resembling natural language, word repetitions, predictable letter distributions, yet no Rosetta Stone has ever surfaced to provide a key. Some theorize it's an elaborate hoax, possibly concocted by Renaissance alchemist Edward Kelly to swindle Emperor Rudolph II out of 600 gold ducats. Others argue it's a genuine artifact of a lost culture, or even an attempt to encode women's herbal knowledge during an era when such wisdom was suppressed. The most tantalizing clue, the manuscript's herbal section shows plants with roots, leaves, and flowers that defy botanical classification, some resembling chimerical hybrids of multiple species, others entirely fantastical. Could these be encrypted representations of real plants or pure imagination given form? The manuscript's survival story adds another layer of mystery. After disappearing for centuries, it resurfaced in 1912 when rare book dealer Wilfred Voynich discovered it in an Italian Jesuit college. Bound within its weathered covers were clues to a bizarre journey, ownership notes linking it to a 17th century alchemist, an erased signature that might belong to Rudolph II's court botanist, and even a letter suggesting the Elizabethan mystic John Dee once owned it. Each potential lead dissolves upon closer inspection, leaving researchers chasing shadows across 600 years of history. Modern computational linguists have thrown every tool at the text: frequency analysis, pattern recognition algorithms, even attempts to match it to constructed languages like Tolkien's Elvish. But the manuscript guards its secrets with eerie consistency. Perhaps the Voynich's greatest lesson isn't about failure, but about how we define knowledge itself. In an age where information is reduced to ones and zeros, this manuscript insists that meaning can exist outside our frameworks. Its unknowability forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Could it be glossolalia, a stream of unconscious symbols never meant to communicate? A Chinese letter journal written in an idiosyncratic cipher so personal that without its creator, it's eternally lost? Or does it represent an entire intellectual tradition that vanished without leaving another trace? The longer the Voynich resists interpretation, the more it becomes a Rorschach test for our assumptions about language, history, and the boundaries of human thought. Unlike other encrypted texts like the Zodiac Killer's ciphers or the CIA's crypto sculpture, the Voynich lacks any anchor to reality that might provide a foothold for decryption. Its very existence whispers a humbling truth that every civilization, no matter how advanced, might leave behind artifacts that future generations simply cannot understand. In this unassuming book bound in faded leather, we find the ultimate limit of preservation, proof that storing knowledge is meaningless without a living thread of comprehension. The Voynich Manuscript doesn't just challenge codebreakers, it challenges our arrogance, reminding us that some doors may remain locked forever, not because the keys don't exist, but because we've forgotten what keys even look like. From knotted cords to hidden statues, these 22 forgotten methods weave together an epic of human resilience, a testament to how civilizations across time refused to let their wisdom dissolve into silence. What's astonishing isn't just the diversity of solutions, but the shared urgency behind them. The Inca's Quipu, the Ethiopian scrolls, the hollow Buddha statues, each was born from the same primal fear that knowledge, once lost, might never return. Yet in their struggle against oblivion, these ancient innovators revealed a truth we've since forgotten. Preservation isn't just about technology, but about intention. Take the humble wax tablet, reusable and affordable, putting literacy within reach of Roman shopkeepers and senators alike. Or the birch bark manuscripts of the Himalayas, their natural oils defying humidity that would devour modern paper. These weren't just clever tricks, they were democratizing acts, ensuring knowledge could travel beyond palace walls and priestly castes. Even the Ogam stones, standing like sentinels across the Irish countryside, turned geography into a library, their messages carved deep enough to weather centuries of storms. Every method carried a hidden philosophy. That wisdom belongs to the future as much as the present. Today, as we back up terabytes of data to cloud servers that could vanish with a corporate bankruptcy, these ancient systems whisper urgent lessons. The Nag Hammadi Codices survived because they were buried in jars, not stored on shelves. The Dead Sea Scrolls endured through environmental savvy, hidden in caves where the dry air became their guardian. Compare that to our fragile digital ecosystems, where file formats obsolesce within decades and entire websites disappear overnight. The ancients understood something we're just relearning: redundancy is survival. They wrote on clay and bark, carved in stone and memory, ensuring no single point of failure could erase their legacy. Perhaps the most poignant takeaway lies in the methods that sacrificed convenience for permanence. The Mesopotamians didn't just scratch symbols into clay, they fired their tablets into ceramic, turning words into something as durable as pottery. The Aztec scribes painted their codices with mineral pigments that outlasted empires, while the Tibetan monks spun prayers into wheels that needed no electricity to remain accessible. These choices reflect a radical patience, a willingness to invest hours, sometimes lifetimes, into making knowledge indelible. In our era of disposable information, where tweets vanish and apps deprecate, their example feels almost revolutionary. So which lesson resonates most? Is it the practicality of the wax tablet, the secrecy of the hidden Buddhas, or the sheer audacity of the Antikythera Mechanism's gears? Whatever your answer, these ancient scholars leave us with a challenge. to build our own arcs for the digital age, systems that prioritize longevity over convenience, accessibility over obscurity. After all, the next generation's ancient wisdom is the data we choose to save today. Hit that subscribe button to keep exploring how civilizations across time turned fleeting thoughts into enduring legacies. And drop a comment below: which of these 22 methods would you revive for the modern world? The conversation starts now, just as the knowledge continues.